the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a...
Really? I thought...
Well, was it? Well, I can tell you now, it was the worst royal engagement I ever did. You know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish. You know, the whole thing was just stage managed to suit them. Worst royal wedding I ever did. He was angry, and I felt, you know, we were punished for that. To offend our queen like he did in that book, you know, it really upset the king. And you know, I don't think he could easily forgive that. And I imagine the King's had strong words with him over it.
If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth.
It's lie upon lie upon lie.
These two are insane narcissists.
She's a narcissist.
That gives you some idea of the scale of the Netflix narcissist.
She is a malignant narcissist. She's also a sociopath.
I'm gagging on the narcissism.
Meghan Markle is a sociopath.
Narcissistic isn't a big enough word.
The world can now see Harry and Meghan for what I've known they are for some time. Narcissistic egotists.
She has been called a narcissist many times.
She is a narcissist of the highest order. Someone that everyone thinks is a sociopathic narcissist.
There's nothing I like about her. She is a malignant narcissist who cannot get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim. My castle's too small. Yeah. The queen is mean to me. They won't let me call myself Her Royal Highness anymore, but I'm going to put it all over my stationery and on the gifts that I give to my friends, while she never stops whining.
I know. Shocking. She's never once played a victim, but she is going to cry, and you will like her and you will see her as a victim, no matter how many dollars it takes, that she is victimized by being a princess.
It sucks. Are you joking? It's bad.
It's terrible.
It's stupid. They're ridiculous.
Welcome back to Tea Time with Tina. So Arthur Edwards didn't just spill tea about Harry and Meghan's wedding. He backed up a tanker truck, parked it in the middle of Windsor, and flooded the streets with boiling hot truth. This wasn't a fairy tale. This wasn't love conquers all. This was the most awkward, sweaty, and self-serving royal event in history. So Arthur is the man who's been photographing the royal family for decades, called it the worst royal wedding he's ever covered. Let that sink in. This guy has been to Prince Andrew's wedding, and this one still wins the Absolute Disaster Award.
I think, you know, I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. You know, I mean, they were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding.
And he wasn't whispering it. He said it like a man who'd been holding it in for years, grinning like someone finally ripping the world's most satisfying Band-Aid off. Because Arthur didn't just see the wedding from the outside; he was in it. He had the front row pass to the train wreck. First, the big romantic carriage moment. Forget it. When Harry and Meghan rolled by, they turned their heads away from the cameras. Arthur was 5 feet from them. 5. And all he got was the royal equivalent of someone pretending to check their phone to avoid eye contact.
The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away. You know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot, when they went past me in the carriage, they looked the other way. So for me, it was a disaster.
Imagine being the official wedding photographer, ready to capture history, and your job turns into take candid photos of the side of Meghan's head. It wasn't just bad luck. Arthur says Harry was doing it on purpose, punishing the press because he didn't like how Meghan was treated during the engagement, which is fine. Except maybe don't sabotage the wedding photos for millions of people who tuned in thinking they were watching a joyful celebration instead of a passive-aggressive grudge match.
Harry was angry with us, really, because some of the things that have been said about Meghan, and quite rightly, some of the things that were said about Meghan during the engagement were pretty harsh.
And then there's the guest list. Oh, you thought royal weddings were for close family, childhood friends, maybe even a few dignitaries? Nope, this was Hollywood Squares, Royal Edition. Oprah Winfrey had met them once, not through a deep personal connection, but because she got invited by George and Amal Clooney, like it was an after party at the Oscars.
You know, and then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, you know, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish, you know.
Did you ever get a sense then that they wanted out, that they wanted a California life, that they wanted showbiz, that they weren't interested? If they weren't interested in making people feel welcome at the wedding.
Serena Williams, Elton John, and a parade of celebrities who'd never shared so much as a group text with the couple. It was so absurd. Reese Witherspoon apparently went, I don't know them, hard pass. Which is basically Hollywood code for, I'm not wasting my Sunday watching two strangers slow walk in matching outfits.
The guest list, beyond the lone family member she inviting a handful of people who you do not know, but certainly not to this extent. There were a huge amount of guests who she had never met. Some people didn't even come. Like, for example, Reese Witherspoon said, "Why would I go? I don't even know them."
This wasn't a family event. This was a networking mixer with vows. But the real fun began when you realized the guests were basically human rotisserie chickens. The venue? Zero shade. The dress code? Layers of royal formal wear designed for a chilly winter's day. Arthur, dressed like he'd been wrapped in Buckingham Palace curtains, was slowly marinating in his own sweat. You had celebrities fanning themselves desperately with the official wedding program, because nothing says elegance like your seatmates smacking themselves in the face with a piece of folded cardstock to avoid passing out. People weren't talking about the romance, they were calculating how long before the paramedics showed up with ice packs. And remember, this is the wedding of the century. Apparently, the century part was about heat stroke survival rates. You think maybe the food made up for it? Hey, if you were picturing a royal feast with silver platters and roasted meats, think again. Arthur says they got tiny finger foods, dainty little canapes so small you could inhale them by accident while talking. Guests left hungrier than when they arrived. Some whispered that they'd have been better off staying home and ordering a pizza instead of sweating through silk just to eat what amounted to air with garnish. Imagine enduring the Sahara in a suit only to be rewarded with a single radish on toast. And oh, the seating. If you were a senior royal who dedicated decades to service, congratulations, you were seated at the back like an uninvited +1. Meanwhile, lesser royals and minor guests got prime front row real estate. Arthur himself ended up behind someone so tall he joked it was like watching the wedding through GPS. Except the GPS was stuck in recalculating mode the entire time. It's almost poetic. The people who actually mattered to the crown shoved aside so Harry and Meghan's chosen crowd could have the Instagram-worthy angle. Arthur makes it clear, Harry wasn't just grumpy. He was out for payback. Still mad about how Meghan was covered pre-wedding, Harry basically gave the press the royal middle finger by ensuring they got nothing usable. Arthur didn't get a single photo published from the day. Not because he didn't take them, but because Harry wouldn't give him a shot worth running.
I want to sort of mention them now, but some of them were pretty unfair as well. And so he was angry, and I felt, we were punished for that. And in fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day.
It's one thing to hold a grudge. It's another to weaponize your wedding day like a petty middle schooler deciding who gets invited to their birthday party. Here's where Arthur's insight gets downright brutal. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about tradition. This was the launch party for the Meghan and Harry global brand. They weren't thinking about life inside the palace. They were already planning their Netflix deals, their Spotify exclusives, their Oprah interviews. Arthur calls the Oprah sit-down one-sided and unfair. Basically, a carefully scripted PR hit job disguised as honesty.
Most of that interview was left on the cutting room floor because it was so one-sided and it was so unfair. And I think about watching it now, and the bit about Archie and the colour of his skin. And I knew they'd be seething. I knew the Queen would be seething. I knew that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, would be seething. It would be so unfair.
From day one, this wedding was their exit strategy. Make a splash big enough that when they left the royal family, the cameras would follow them, and it worked. But at the cost of alienating the very people and traditions that made the world care about them in the first place. Arthur Edwards didn't just close the book on Meghan and Harry's wedding. He lit it on fire, tossed it, and waved goodbye while sipping tea. And honestly, can you blame him? This was supposed to be the wedding of the century, the crowning jewel of a modern fairy tale. Instead, it played out like the pilot episode of a reality show no one asked for. Part Survivor, part Keeping Up with the Sussexes, with a dash of the Hunger Games thrown in for the guests baking in the sun.
I think, I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. They were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding.
Think about it. A wedding where the bride and groom turned their heads away from cameras on purpose. A guest list that looked like someone Googled famous people and just started sending out invites. Seating that insulted the people who'd actually built the monarchy's reputation. And catering that made guests nostalgic for airplane peanuts. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't bad luck. This was a strategy. Harry and Meghan weren't building a marriage that day. They were building a brand.
He decided to leave the royal family and go his own way in the United States. And he's just behaving, I think, sometimes appallingly. Certainly some of the things he said about members of the royal family, certainly, and Camilla and Catherine and his brother. I think you just don't do that with family.
They knew exactly what they were doing, crafting an image, controlling the narrative, and planting the seeds for their future as celebrity power players who could cash in on their titles without having to actually live by the royal rulebook. And here's the tragic, almost Shakespearean twist. The whole thing was sold to the public as a love story, but behind the scenes, it was a boardroom meeting with flower arrangements. Every handshake, every camera angle, every celebrity invite. It all fed into the Sussex 2.0 launch plan. Arthur saw it. He felt it. And years later, when the Netflix deals, podcast flops, tell-all books, and endless public feuds rolled in, his words from that day became prophetic. This wasn't a royal wedding. It was a corporate merger with vows.
And it's one of the saddest things of all, Matt, of course, is that the children don't get to see their grandfather, either grandfather, you know, and that's really so awful because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins, and it's such a shame for them.
Just when you think the wedding circus was the grand finale, Harry finds a way to keep the absurdity going. Fast forward to the Invictus Games ceremony in London, a moment that could have been about unity, honoring veterans, and, behaving like an adult. Instead, Harry turned it into another episode of Look How Different I Am from My Family. The king, his own father, offered him a royal residence. Not just a bed and breakfast, but the kind of palace where the walls have seen more history than Netflix could fit into a 10-part series. The kind of place guarded 24/7 by the most elite security in the country. And Harry? He turns it down. Says he doesn't feel safe there.
When he was over for the Invictus Games ceremony, he didn't want to stay in a royal residence that was offered to him by the king because he didn't feel he had enough protection there.
Excuse me? Safe from what? The centuries-old architecture? The over-polished floors? This is a man who already travels with his own mini army of bodyguards, the kind that look like they could bench press a double-decker bus. But apparently, Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle aren't secure enough for Prince, I need my privacy. So he books himself into Coworth Park Hotel instead, a luxury resort just close enough to Windsor to be petty about it.
Excuse, I think he wanted to stay in a hotel, and he was determined to do that. And don't forget, he travels with a small retinue of bodyguards as well, and so I suspect that was the reason why he did it. He had his own protection, and he felt that was enough.
Arthur Edwards didn't buy it for a second, and honestly, neither should anyone else. Because here's the truth. This wasn't about safety. This was about optics. Harry wanted the photo op of walking into his own hotel, his own security in tow, his own rules. It was his way of planting a giant "Keep Out, Royals Not Welcome" sign on his trip. It's performative independence, the royal equivalent of a teenager running away from home, but only as far as the fancy hotel down the street where they still use their dad's credit card. And you just know his PR team spun it into some noble stance about self-reliance. In reality, it was another box checked in the "We Don't Need the Monarchy" brand guide, all while cashing in on the fame and connections the monarchy gave him in the first place. And the best part? After all the drama about not feeling safe in a royal residence, Harry spent the Invictus trip strutting around for the cameras like he was on a red carpet, shaking hands, giving speeches, basking in applause. Not exactly the behavior of a man hiding from danger. It's almost poetic. The palace offered him sanctuary, but he chose the spotlight. Because for Harry, it's never really about safety. It's about making sure he's the one writing the script, even if the rest of us can see the plot holes from a mile away. So when you picture Meghan and Harry's big day, don't think of it as a fairy tale. Think of it as the day the monarchy lost 2 royals, and Hollywood gained 2 very ambitious influencers. So here's the question. Was this really a royal love story gone wrong? Or was it always a meticulously staged PR stunt designed to catapult Meghan and Harry out of the palace and straight into Hollywood's open arms? Because the way Arthur Edwards tells it, this wasn't about vows or family. It was about optics, branding, and making sure their names stayed glued to the headlines. I want to hear what you think. Was this the day the monarchy lost 2 of its own, or the day the Sussexes gained exactly what they wanted? Drop your thoughts in the comments. No holding back. I read every single one, and the spicier the take, the better. And if you're as done with the palace fairy tale spin as I am, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when the next royal scandal drops. Because trust me, this circus is far from over, and the next act? Oh, it's going to make this wedding look like a dress rehearsal. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed my content, feel free to check out some of my other videos on the top of the screen. Until next time, stay tuned, stay safe, and stay informed. Only on Tea Time with Tina.